I had a question about remembering who we are. I have moments of remembering my broad perspective and who I am as soul or spirit.
You don't have to remember it. You can tap right into it live.
Yes. It's a knowing, an experience. It's a feeling. That's true. I was wondering, I wanted clarification on this veil of forgetfulness, because it seems like when we're in the broader perspective and then we, so to speak, incarnate into our human experience, it seems like I have forgotten a lot.
Nothing important.
Oh.
Well, look at it this way. Do you try to use your eyes to hear beautiful music?
No.
So you hear beautiful music by using the vibrational translator of sound.
Yes.
Do you try to taste your food with your eyes or with your nose? Or do you use the interpreter that does the best job of tasting to taste with? So you have these facilities to devour and experience your environment. And you have emotions that are sensors also, that you believed so much in as you decided to come back. You knew that you would be able to see, and you knew you would be able to hear, and you knew you would be able to smell and taste and feel, and you knew you would be able to know through your emotions the path. So you didn't feel like you needed to remember a whole bag full of experiences that would only serve to confuse. You came with everything you needed. And think about what that is. You came into an environment that was set up to inspire your personal desire. And you knew that it was an environment that could produce a response. In other words, any desire that could be born within you, this time-space reality could fulfill. And you knew that you had guidance that would help you find your way to it. And so there wasn't anything that you have forgotten that was important. What makes you think you've forgotten is that you have a whole bunch of people around you trying to guide you toward things that you never knew. Guide you to things that have never been valid. Guide you to behavioral responses that have never worked for anybody. In other words, you live in an environment where most people who will guide you will say, you've got to control conditions, and when you control conditions, then the conditions will be better, and then you'll have a better life. And it is so invalid because, first of all, nobody can control conditions. You can't even agree on how the conditions should be controlled. In other words, look at what happens in your world as you squabble over religion and try to kill each other. Those who don't agree with you, you just figure out a way to wipe them out. But what happens is you keep refining the specifics of the way that you think you want to live until you start wiping out your own. In much of the world, it is Christians wiping out Muslims or other way around. But in parts of the world now, it's Christians wiping out Christians because they're nitpicking over some crummy little detail of something, you see. What we're wanting you to understand is until you remember and you come back again and again knowing it, we call this the time of reawakening, not awakening, but reawakening. And we think that's what you're getting at.
Yes,
how come I wasn't consciously aware of my guidance system earlier in this experience? And we say, you were really early in your experience, but someplace really early on, somebody bigger convinced you that you should follow what they needed you to do so that they would feel better, and you began to lose your trust in guiding yourself through what felt better to you. But guess what happened in that experience? Just like when Jerry was sick when he was little.
More rockets of desire.
More rockets of desire, which puts you in a place where then you have an experience like this. So you have a much more fulfilling, consciously aware experience now. Now's the best time of your life. And none of that was wasted life. None of it is to be regretted. All of it was part of building the momentum for this joyous now. You see what we see with so many of you. You get tuned back in consciously through our work and other work to connection with who you really are. And then you do a little lamenting about those times that you were not tuned back in. And we say to you, but you cannot feel how you felt then from your now perspective, because now you know what you know. You couldn't in this life experience ever stand to go back. But while you were there, you weren't doing so bad. In other words, your childhoods, no matter how you make them out to be, were not as dismal as so many of you would point them out to be. It's just in comparison with what you now know, they feel sort of dismal. But then, they weren't all that dismal. Some better than others. We are not trying to make light of any hardships that you lived, but we do want to say to you that everything that you lived contributed to your clarity of focus, and that clarity of focus is now responsible for how you feel now. And any way you cut it, it was all part of who you now are, and therefore it was all a really good thing.
So I haven't been making mistakes like I've been judging myself to be.
Never. And your inner beings, the collective inner beings who reside in the non-physical realm where we are not one time, not ever, not any, ever looking at any activity, not even a trade in the futures market, and feeling regret about it. Not one time ever. There is no regret in non-physical. It's just, look what has become out of all of that experience, and isn't this fine? And when you line up with that, that's the ultimate making peace with it, isn't it? The ultimate. When we see what is, and we see who you are, and we see what is becoming, we can find no reason to regret anything. But then we're focused. We hold ourselves in alignment with that joy and with that love and with that appreciation. So we don't deliberately or indeliberately torture ourselves as humans sometimes do. So then you say, well, I tortured myself unknowingly, and then I got conscious, and now I do my best not to torture myself, but I am a little bummed out that I tortured myself unknowingly. And we say, but now you're torturing yourself knowingly. That's what regret is under these conditions. It's knowingly torturing myself when I know better.
So my having memories of all these other experiences wouldn't have helped me in this life to make better choices or remain connected?
Well, look at the beasts of your planet. Look at the birds or the butterflies or all of those that migrate. Look at all of them, about the way they move about the planet, and then talk about how do they know that? How does that bird who was born in that egg, who never knew its mother, how does it know what to do? Does it remember? Is it remembering who it was before? Or is it tuned in to the true essence of who it is, and it's following the guidance from the broader perspective, which is giving it the perfect action in the moment? Jerry watched the little rooster come out of the egg, and 2 days later, the little rooster, the little chick, is going when a butterfly flies over, just like the big rooster makes a sound much bigger than that, but for the same reason when a hawk flies over. Jerry said, look at that. It doesn't even know about a hawk. It hasn't had any experience, and it had no mother to tell it. But somehow it's instinct, and we say it is guidance from broader perspective. It's already practicing everything that it needs to know. And you're the same way, you see. You don't need to remember what you knew before. You just need to tap in to what you now know. And you trusted in that ability to tap in. Memory of stuff just clutters the mind. Sometimes Esther will lie in her bed at night, and she's decided to go to sleep, and she has all of these scattered thoughts that are moving through her mind. And one by one, she just systematically said, I don't have to think about that. I'll look over here. I don't have to think about that. I'll look over there. Until one by one, she sort of ratchets her mind down as she realizes she does not single-handedly have to think all of the thoughts of the world into being. In other words, you just don't have to think so much. You can be. And when you be at one with that which is true thought. That's really what you're reaching for. You're reaching for alignment with that which is you, which is thought. Well-being thought.
Hello. I have a very specific question that has come about my study of your teaching. And that is bridging the gap between reality and belief. So, for example,
there is no gap between reality and belief. None.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to manifest, is understanding that and living that.
Well, look at it this way. What you believe is your reality. Period. Because law of attraction is exact. So if you want a different reality, then you need some different beliefs. All a belief is an activated thought that you activate regularly. So if you want a different reality, then you have to activate different thoughts regularly enough that they become a dominant activation. Right. That's all Donald Trump did. He just said it and 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 said it until it dominated his vibration, and then it had to be, and then he could notice it and 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 continue it. In other words, it's not very hard to get a little momentum going. You say something that isn't until it is, and then you can observe it and maintain it. And then you say something that isn't until it is, and then you can notice it and maintain it.
Okay. I understand that. There's 2 examples where I have difficulty with that.
Well, don't say that. You say it and 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 say it. It continues to be difficult, 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 difficult. So say that differently.
Okay, the challenge I have...
Say it differently. The improvement I'm looking for, the newfound desire that is within me that I want to manifest, say it differently.
Okay. So the growth I'm seeking is to understand...
Pretty good.
How, when on your tape, The Law of Allowing, the question was asked about territorial space being invaded. And the answer was, well, if you believe in the lack of space, I can understand where your question is coming from. And although territory to me is not an important issue, I understood the physicalness that we see as the Earth's surface as being limited by space. But the understanding that you were sharing was that's just a belief system, it's not really true. Like a measurable space versus a physical space, and seeing them as the same thing.
Well, we understand that when you look at your planet and you measure how many square feet there are on it, and then you divide it by the number of people that are on it, you might say, well, this truly is a finite amount of dirt. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it from broader perspective and you realize how, first of all, the majority of your planet is not inhabited. Really? Have you flown over anything lately? You cluster together close to each other and then fight over your square footage. Mm-hmm. You haven't even begun
I see.
to tap the resources of this time space. And then when you factor in what a short time any of you are here, and how even though you might have a long lease, you're not going to hang around forever. Mm-hmm. So the population keeps recirculating, and the way you look at land keeps recirculating, and the way you utilize your land keeps developing, and your ability to stack yourselves up and dig yourselves down, and in other words, it's just unlimited in your ability to utilize your resources.
Okay.
When you look at the economy of your planet right now, you just have to acknowledge, even in the short life you've lived here in this body this time, how the economy has expanded, even though you're not trucking in any resources from any place else. So what's
Correct.
Responsible for the expansion? And if you believe that what's responsible for the expansion is just digging up the resources and mining them, then we can see how you would develop fear that there is a finite number of resources and that you're going to develop them and utilize them and use them up. But when you factor in the recycling, when you factor in the movement of your planet, when you factor in the ability of the planet to produce more land, when you factor in your ability to discover resources and put combinations of resources to, in other words, you never need to worry about this planet being able to produce for you, because there is this law that we discussed earlier that says if you can define it as a desire, this environment has the ability to fulfill it. And we're going to lay a big one on you right now that is going to cause you to reach into a place that most of you have never reached before. Everything that you see is illusionary anyway. And the illusion can be whatever you choose it to be. You got to go there before you can accept
Right.
the infinity in which you live and the never-endedness of what you live.